Yes, ma'am.
Governor, should long-term homeowners eventually stop paying property tax entirely, or is some level of ongoing tax fair?
No, you should own your property free and clear. I think to say that someone that's been in their house for 35 years just has to keep ponying up money, that is not. You don't own your home if that's the case.
I think Ron DeSantis is onto something on this take. Welcome back to the channel. Ron DeSantis was at a press conference recently where they were talking about taxation, what should and shouldn't be taxed in short order. He basically brought up the philosophical discussion of where you should be paying taxes and on what things that you should be paying taxes for. Should you be paying taxes on, I don't know, your cell phone every year? Is this something that you should pay a new tax on every single year? Same thing as your property. And he brings this up in this conference here. Let's get right into it.
We're doing a lot of big things that I think people want to see the state do, while at the same time really maintaining something that is that is working very well. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud that we don't have an income tax. And as long as I have anything to say about it, that will never happen in Florida. I'm also proud we've been able to cut a lot of taxes. But the number one thing,
just for everyone's information, in Florida there is no income tax. There are sales taxes, and this is how they bring in a lot of revenue from out of towners, and that's a great way because they have a lot of people coming in to visit Florida because of the beautiful weather, whether it's Americans, people from abroad, Canadian snowbirds that live in the state for 6 months of the year. This is how they make a lot of their revenue, and it's a great source. But now he gets into some of the other stuff. Property taxes. This is a big issue.
in terms of tax is that people talk about is what's happened with property taxes. You know, if you go back 5 or 6 years ago, Florida was fine, but when COVID hit, we were open. Some of these states were closed. People flooded down here, and you had massive spike in real estate values, and which, you know, on the one hand, like you have your you have your home, that's your number one asset for many people, and you know, if you bought it for $250,000 10 years ago, then all of a sudden over a 5-year period it triples in value. That for you is an asset if you eventually sell it, that you would realize, you know, but with the increase in values as people are buying homes in particular, you have higher tax basis to pay property taxes.
Now, this has been a big issue across the board. I know Canada, for example, is in the world's largest housing bubble ever seen, and people's property taxes are going up, skyrocketing. Are we seeing a lot of better roads and other resources, other things that these property taxes go towards? No, we're just seeing a lot more waste in government. We're seeing a lot more people lining their own pockets. We see a lot of that. But you know, when you're in Florida, when you're in Florida, huge property tax increases because of property values going up. I know a lot of people all across the United States are saying, "Hey, the property's values are going up, but why is my tax burden? Why should I have to pay even a tax philosophically on the level? Why is it that I have to pay a tax on something I've already paid for?" And of course, this is where that money goes towards. It goes towards building roads. It goes towards all these other things. But is this exactly how we should be pulling this revenue in the first place?
And sometimes, like, you know, if you have a homestead is great, but the homestead is limited in terms of how much benefits you get. And so your property goes up 3 times. You're paying more, no question about it. Then if you have to buy a new home because maybe your family's growing, maybe your job took you to a different city, you're locked in at a much higher tax basis right there, and that's really tough. And so it's like, you know, you have people, the median home price is $400-some thousand, but the median income is like $75,000, $85,000 for a family. And so how does it work where you're having to pay 10 grand a year just in property taxes? And the thing about it is, this is supposed to be your private property, but yet you could own your home for 50 years and you still got to pay the government just to live on your property. I mean, at some point, when do you own your property free and clear or are you just always going to be paying rent to the government? So I think there's a philosophical debate that we need to have.
Well, that's exactly the point. It is a philosophical debate. When do you actually own your property? And if the government is able to tax you on that property, do they in turn own your property? Is some some state or the federal government, is it a municipal government that actually at the end of the day owns your property? Or do you actually own it free and clear? Because if you don't pay your property taxes, somebody's going to take you to a court. And eventually, if you don't pay, someone's going to show up to remove you from your property so that they can sell it and get that tax revenue. This is clearly unfair, and it doesn't follow the philosophical idea of either homesteading or property ownership in its true way.
About property tax, but there's also just the practical debate, and this is not limited to Florida. If you look around the country, probably most of the people in this room, when you bought your first home, and if you did a residential mortgage, you'd look, and most of the money you would pay monthly would go to the principal and interest on the mortgage. Then you'd have some for insurance and some for taxes, but the principal and interest was always the biggest. Now, it's pretty standard across the country that the insurance plus principal and interest is more than what the taxes plus principal and interest are more than what you pay on the balance of your home. You're paying tax, you're paying insurance, and then
that's just ridiculous.
Principal and interest is less than those two combined. And so this is difficult for people. So the tax, we can't control the value of homes in the government. You wouldn't want us to try to do that. No. It wouldn't work. Insurance, we've done a lot of reforms. The market is stabilized. More companies are coming in. But that's very, very tricky when you've got 6 major hurricanes in 7 years. Our market is the most challenging in the country. Government can't just set a rate. If I could just say you pay $1 a month, I would do that, right? But we know that everything would collapse. It's just not. It's a private market. But
it is a private market, and it should stay in private hands. Absolutely. Later in this, gets questions from the press, and the press asks him this question. Says, "Hey." So you're just saying that people should not have to pay property taxes, and that's where it's headed? That's where we're going?
Yes, ma'am.
Governor, should long-term homeowners eventually stop paying property tax entirely, or is some level of ongoing tax fair?
No, you should own your property free and clear. I think to say that someone that's been in their house for 35 years just has to keep ponying up money, that is not. You don't own your home if that's the case. So yes, of course, I'd like to see people be able to owe free and clear. And it's interesting because it's like if I go to Best Buy and buy a flat screen TV and put it on the wall, I got to pay a sales tax on it, right? But I don't keep paying tax on it every year. I mean, it's just not. That's not how we do things. It's like, okay, if you're going to tax something, you tax it at the transaction, and then let people actually enjoy their private property free and clear of the government. So that, I think, is the vision. That's the philosophical insight. And if you think about our founding fathers, when they were proposing the Constitution, in one of the Federalist Papers, I think it was Hamilton, he's writing about, because there was opposition to the Constitution. They were making a more powerful federal government than under the Articles of Confederation, and people worried about taxation. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have, obviously, a 16th Amendment, which eventually came on income tax, but basically you were not effectively allowed to do any direct taxation. It had to be indirect, meaning you couldn't just, you could theoretically just apply like a tax on land federally, but it'd have to be a portion among the states, so practically it could never work. So basically, Hamilton's saying, look, the indirect taxes are the most effective, efficient way to raise revenue for the government, because they basically allow the individual to choose how much tax they want to pay based on how much they're consuming. And there's a security, there's a protection against excessive tax in that regard, because if the government raises consumption tax too much, it kills the golden goose, because then it causes people to stop purchasing as much. But he said taxing property is one of the worst forms of taxation, because people don't have a choice in the matter, and you're just basically drilling these folks over and over again on tax. And so it's it's an issue that I think's pinched a lot of people, but philosophically it was not the way that that the federal government was constructed. Now I understand local, there was a history of it, and that's kind of been the norm, but man, I mean, you talk about family of four having the median home price that is purchased in Florida, that's a pretty hefty tax bill right there when you come in after buying a home. When you consider what the average income is throughout the United States of America, the math just doesn't add up. And I think
it doesn't add up, and that's exactly why a lot of people are suffering right now. And a lot of people will say in the comments, "Hey, well, you're not paying this tax if you're renting a place." Of course you're paying this tax. The homeowner is paying the tax on the rental property that you live in, so therefore you're paying the tax. They're just passing it on to you. So if you want to avoid paying property tax, well, you just can't. You just absolutely can't. And this is the philosophical reason that Ron DeSantis is bringing this up. Very interesting concept. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. And of course, we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.